Update 1.0.5 is live in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Today I want to quickly go through all of the new content that this update adds, along with my thoughts and impressions now that I've experienced it. For a lot of people, the main appeal of this new update will be the parkour additions. There have been noticeable improvements to side ejects and back ejects. However, I'm gonna have to argue that for me, the open world in Shadows is still so poor that when I loaded into the game, it took me like a few minutes to actually find a location where I could practice parkour, and even then, I experienced a lot of technical glitches and issues, which I think is down to this update. For some reason, it has destroyed my PC. My PC did struggle at launch to run Assassin's Creed Shadows. I mean, that's probably an understatement. It literally crashed every 30 seconds. But for some reason, after I got it fixed and working properly, this update has just rendered it back to where it was. And it means that the game was extremely difficult to play. I had to go into my settings, make some edits, and thankfully I was able to complete this new crossover quest at a good standard. Now, I'm not an expert in the parkour in Assassin's Creed. Of course, I have been playing Assassin's Creed for about 13 years, and I've, obviously liked and disliked different versions of the parkour, but in terms of being an expert of mobility, that's not really me. I do enjoy doing parkour from time to time, but I wouldn't consider myself an expert. And with that sort of casual approach to this, I'd say this update to the parkour is somewhat unnoticeable unless you're looking for it. And what I mean by that is, this is still Assassin's Creed Shadows. The world is very flat. You will often find yourself only 1 or 2 stories high at most. And whilst Nawi's parkour movement has been improved, so she's not always magnetized to the ground, she's not always aiming to go downwards and instead can go upwards, it is very rare that you'll find yourself using a lot of the side ejects or back ejects. Maybe the side ejects a little bit more, because now you can actually use those not just in the cities, but also when you're climbing up mountains, I've found. Especially with Yasuke, he's able to now get to some higher reaches that he wouldn't have been able to, due to the fact that he can now side eject up mountains, which can get you some extra sneaky height. Honestly though, the addition that I think is the biggest with this update is the manual jump, hang thing that they've added. You will be surprised how many of the buildings and the architecture in Assassin's Creed Shadows is up a height, without any method of getting up to it, like these beams or these bits hanging out. And I think the devs even knew that the architecture of Japan was going to be a compromise, because now we had that little rope that she could throw up to help her escalate quicker. A bit similar to the Syndicate rope launcher, and I think that's because they knew the architecture was vertically going to be very difficult to traverse because of how much it sticks out. However, adding this manual jump from a ground level is really cool. It doesn't just work for market stalls, it works for beams and poles as well, which I found very useful in the few minutes that I was playing. Instantly, I found myself using it just to get to higher ledges, and that was actually pretty cool. So that's about all I'm going to say for the parkour. It's okay, it's good. I still think that the main issue with Assassin's Creed Shadows, however, is the world design, and it really needs a big expansion or an overhaul to the terrain to make it parkour accessible. Next up is the Dead by Daylight crossover. Now, I have no idea what Dead by Daylight is. I gather that it is some sort of horror video game zombie thing. I honestly don't know. But hearing a crossover with Assassin's Creed Shadows piqued my interest, and I went into this new crossover mission with 0 expectations. I didn't know what this was even going to be. And I must say, I was very pleasantly surprised. This quest surprisingly integrates a lot of Shadows' core mechanics. You have a stealth section where you can't kill the creature that's hunting you down. And yes, I said creature, we will get to that. It also incorporates the parkour, because the whole mission, playground area they give you is basically having to stealth your way to different high up locations, which involves climbing, parkour, stealth, and also you're being hunted at the same time. So it is quite exhilarating, I must admit. It did take me a couple of attempts to finish this because I figured it would be really easy and I just ran straight through it and ended up getting killed. You actually do have to take your time, and if you want an additional challenge, you can play as Yasuke and try and use his limited mobility to achieve the same objectives. And I really wish that this mission was replayable, because switching between Yasuke and Naoe does give that different style of gameplay and challenge, and even with the combat section afterwards, it's almost like the game has designed this mission so you play as Naoe first and then switch to Yasuke, but I would love to retry it the other way around and get that extra sense of challenge. I don't know how feasible it is to replay missions in Shadows. Obviously in the current build that is just not possible. In the older Assassin's Creed games you could replay missions, but I think this is probably going to be something they save for New Game Plus, but we'll see about that. Now, of course, the big tension point with this crossover event is, well, it's actually two things. The first thing is just the supernatural aspect in general. Could be seen as going back on the mentality that Shadows had, where it was going to keep everything extremely grounded, to the point where the main story has, like, no pieces of Eden in it, no reference to the Isu. It is a totally grounded historical narrative. However, by including an Oni, a demon, and this whole like spiritual reality, as we expected, they've gone back on their word. Now, it is a video game crossover with another franchise, a bit like the Final Fantasy one in Assassin's Creed Origins, which I consider like non-canon because the guy shows up with a metal dragon and a totally different art style, and it's clearly just meant to be like poking fun. But with this, it's kind of blurred the line a bit because it is obviously a Japanese-themed crossover with, like, something that we would have seen in Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Valhalla, and that is kind of weird for me. I don't know how I feel about it. It is maybe a bit too close for comfort, if you know what I mean. As somebody who doesn't really like the fantasy aspects of Assassin's Creed, despite how, I have to admit, how well done they've been done in the past, in terms of, like, if you're a casual player who doesn't really care about the canon, you're going to see the Cyclops, you're going to see the Norse mythology stuff, and you're going to think it's cool, and it is pretty well executed, like I have to admit, even though it's totally against what I think Assassin's Creed should be about. It is always well done by the team, I feel, and a similar thing has happened here. The second point of tension is the fact that the only reward for completing this crossover event is a trinket, which is extremely disappointing when you've got this really cool Oni design, this really cool set of armor, that they did release, but as a gear pack in the store, which is just a gut punch for everybody who wanted like a cool new outfit alongside the crossover. You've got to fork out like £20 to get it, and I do not advise that anybody does that. Although I will admit, I did have a look at the store, I looked at the skin just to see how it looked, I looked at Naoe's as well. I actually prefer Naoe's to Yasuke's. I think her zombie nurse thing looks really cool. The final thing that this update adds is some additions to the photo mode. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really looked at these, but I do feel like it's worth mentioning because a lot of people are a big fan of the photo mode. There's a whole community around it, and I got told off in my previous update video for not talking about it, so I feel like it's worth mentioning here. I believe there's like ambient music you can listen to now while you prepare your photographs, which is really cool. I think that's a nice addition, and I think it's good to throw a bone to the people who like the photo mode because I don't believe it's ever had an update in Assassin's Creed before, so that is obviously very nice to see. Do I think this update is worth coming back to the game for? Honestly, yes. Like, I think the parkour is probably going to bring you back for like 10 minutes and then go, like, you're either going to like it and notice the differences and be really happy with that, or it's going to totally fly over your head, because I wouldn't say it's a substantial enough change where it feels like a totally new system. We are not back to Assassin's Creed 2 yet. You know, we're not there yet. We're getting there, but I don't think it's quite there. Maybe in a year's time, after we've gotten a few more parkour updates, the game will be in a place where I can say this is totally different from launch. This is a brand new, like, if you went into this now, I'd totally recommend it, but I just don't feel like we're there yet. Especially with the narrative section, like we still have not had a conclusion to the story, for example. But we have had a cool crossover event. I do think the crossover event is worth playing. Like, it's going to take you maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on, like I say, the difficulty that you personally put on it. The parkour isn't as flashy, surprisingly, obviously, because how can it compete with this supernatural event? But it is quite entertaining, and I do like it. And I do hope that the future updates... I can't remember what's in the next update, but I think it needs to sort of ramp up a bit, especially considering Shadows has been out for, I think, over 2 months now, and hype for the game is pretty dead. Like, at least in my circle and from what I've seen online, like, a lot of people are moving away from Assassin's Creed, moving on to different games now, and even I've started, like, making content about the older Assassin's Creed games. I've already, like, left Shadows to go back and look at the previous games, so I don't know. I'm really hoping that we either get some news at Summer Game Fest, or a secret Ubisoft forward would be nice, or even, you know, some news on the Awaji DLC, which is supposedly coming out in September. For me, that's quite a long wait, and I feel like the game is going to be dead and buried by the time that comes out, but fingers crossed, here's hoping. What do you think of this new update? Let me know down below if you're playing it, if you're not, if you've even, I don't know, you might have uninstalled the game by now, who knows. Let me know down below. If you did like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Assassin's Creed content, and I will see you in the next video.